Yes, okay. Okay, kia ora koutou, nau mai haere mai ki tēnei hui, kia ranginui e te e honoi, kia papatuanuku e takoto nei, tēnā korua, ko te pukapuka te take nui o te kōpapa, nau mai haere mai. Welcome everyone to our webinar, Pathways to Publishing. We are here today to talk about the important work of your non-fiction book. So thank you for joining us, whether you're here live or on the replay. I think that you are all muted, but if not, please mute yourselves. We are going to be moving quite quickly. We have quite a lot to get through, and in 1 hour, it's really only possible to give a broad overview of the publishing process, but we hope to be giving you enough information that you can make some pretty good decisions for yourselves. We will answer questions at the end. We will endeavour to allow enough time to do so. So please just put them in the chat as we go through, and Sarah will be keeping an eye on those. We won't be discussing fiction. This is purely for non-fiction, and we won't be able to give an opinion on anybody's specific book. There's obviously a lot of nuance that goes into making the right choice for you, but we hope to be able to give you a good guide to do that. So let's get started. Kia ora koutou, ko tamahanga te maunga, ko matakana te awa, ko Herding te waka, ko Christine Sheehy aho. I am Christine Sheehy. I am a book coach, certified by Author Accelerator to coach nonfiction and memoir. I'm also an author of 2 nonfiction books, and I've contributed to many others. And what I do as a book coach is that I support experts, coaches, and thought leaders to take a vague idea, develop that into a compelling book concept, plan their content, write their manuscript, and develop a book proposal if that's what you want to do, so that you can pitch to agents or publishers. So that's where my work is focused, but we're not going to actually talk about that today, because what we're going to be looking at is what happens next. And I believe it's really important to have your eyes on that process from the beginning so you can make really informed choices. So we're going to be talking about getting your book into the hands of readers, and that's where Sarah comes in.
All right. Kia ora tātou, ko Takaronga te maunga ki tōku taha, ko Waitemata tā ngā waiata karere te tōku kaha, no Wurundjeri country o Ahi Te Reiria aho. Kei te noho aho ki Te Heu Kapua o Tamaki Makaurau, ko Sarah tōku ingoa, no reira, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Sarah, and I've been a book designer and illustrator for over 15 years. My background is in traditional publishing, but these days I work with a lot of indie publishers, self-publishing authors, and experts in the author-led publishing through Waiako Books, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail later on. For about 8 years, I worked as an in-house graphic designer at some of the biggest publishing houses and educational publishers in New Zealand. And there I was able to work on every genre imaginable and see the whole publishing process from the inside. So design-wise, I was able to work on the most simple ABC books for children through to really complex technical manuals. And I got to liaise directly with local and overseas printers, created merch, got to work with some really great brands. And now when I work with a self-publishing author, I'm able to bring all of that knowledge of the process and support them through it. So what we're going to be covering today, we are going to demystify the publishing process so that you can understand what your options are before you write or finish your book. Maybe you've written a full draft of a book, or maybe you're partway through the process right now, or maybe you're just starting out with a bit of an idea or an outline. It's never too early to get an overview of what your publishing options are and understanding the pros and cons of each. And that includes understanding the local book market. So according to PANZ, the Publishing Association of New Zealand, we publish around 2,000 books per year. This includes our international titles. One of the biggest publishers in New Zealand is Penguin Random House, and they publish around 80 to 100 local books each year across all genres and readerships. So children's and young adult books, adult fiction and non-fiction, like lifestyle, cooking, business, history, memoir, those sorts of genre. In the current post-COVID publishing landscape, it is very competitive, and publishers need to maximize their profit margins by creating books that they're really confident are going to sell. Publishing is definitely a business, and Christine's going to delve into this in a bit more detail now.
Yeah, so one of the things that comes up quite often with clients is that publishing is a lifelong dream, something they've wanted to do since they were small. And there's a lot of maybe romance and mystique attached to that process. And the idea of securing a book deal is can be very prized. But the reality is that no matter how you publish your book, publishing is a business. So it's a little bit less romantic. Your book is the product. And so you need to be able to make a viable business case for your book. And that applies regardless of the path that you follow. Someone is going to be investing in that product and taking it to market. It could be you or it could be the publisher. So unless you're writing your book purely for personal satisfaction, purely for the creative exercise and for family and friends, you need to be thinking about where your book sits in the market, who's going to buy it, and how to build that business case. And we'll talk about that when we talk about book proposals. And the other thing is that whatever path you go down as the author, you should expect to be heavily involved in the marketing and sales of your book. Now, the truth is that in most, but not all cases, you're not going to make a huge amount of money from the book itself. But the benefits of writing a nonfiction book can go well beyond the book sales themselves. So especially for those who work in professional services or have an audience of some kind, the investment of time and money in the book can lead to things like promotional opportunities, invitations to speak at events or to be a guest on podcasts. It can lead to building your authority as an expert in your field and becoming a thought leader, sharing your ideas to a broader audience. And it can also lead to new clients, of course, or it can warm up prospective new clients because they get to read about your philosophy or your approach in depth, and that may lead to them becoming clients in the future. And that's when it forms a low-cost product as part of your offers. So the other important thing too is that the process of defining your ideas, of getting them onto the page, of building out a framework in many cases can lead to new ideas for products, for courses, for coaching programs. So the intellectual exercise of writing the book is hugely valuable, I believe, regardless of what happens in terms of the sales of the book. But so the bottom line is the financial return from the book itself can be small, but the rewards in a broader sense can be great. And obviously it's very individual to your book and your situation. Okay, so let's take a look at what happens in the publishing process, because I think that from the outside, you often don't understand or are not aware of all the steps that go into taking a book from your hands and into the hands of the reader. So this applies regardless of the approach that you choose. These are some of the things that you will need to work through. So when you've finished your manuscript, you've got a draft, it's in pretty good shape, it will go to an editor. And there might be more than one round of editing. First of all, there might be some big picture developmental editing where they work out whether things are in the right order and whether it makes sense, whether this chapter belongs here, that kind of thing. You might be then asked to do some rewrites. It might go back to a second round of editing, which is the more of the detailed piece, more of a minute detail, I guess you'd say. Again, there might be rewrites. Once it's complete, it will go for a proofread. It doesn't matter how many times you read it yourself, you know what it's meant to say, so it's easy for mistakes to slip through. So that's why it goes to a fresh pair of eyes for a proofread. I will also say that is a specialty in itself, to know grammar inside and out and so on. And then you have a completed manuscript. So Sarah will explain what happens from there.
All right, so now it's time to get the thing looking less like a Word document and more like an actual book. So this is where you engage a typesetter or a book designer to do the internal page layout. The same designer usually does the cover as well, but it might be someone different, particularly if you've got a specific concept for the cover that requires, something like a custom illustration or a photograph. It really depends on the book and the skills, expertise, and the visual style that your book designer has. Either way, you'll need to brief that designer so that they understand your vision for the book, what the target audience is, what you're trying to achieve with your book, and where it sits in the market. Often what I do is provide a sample design, which consists of a few internal pages to show the look and feel of the book and one or two cover concepts, which we then discuss and we refine it, tweak it until the author is happy with the look. And then once that the look and feel, I guess, has really been articulated, then the rest of the pages can be laid out and the final cover is prepared. That cover then needs to be approved and tested in all of the places that it is going to appear. So that might include things like a printed copy. It might also need to function as a tiny digital thumbnail on somebody's screen. It might also have to work in black and white if readers are going to be accessing it on a Kindle, for example. So we test it in all of those places and make sure that it's working. Then finally, once that design is complete and signed off, you have got what is called final pages. And these can then be printed, or in the case of an ebook, uploaded. If it's printed, we send those files away to the printer to get a proof copy, which is just one or sometimes two fully printed copies, which we use to check things like the colors, margin, and spacing, and that kind of thing. There might be some revisions necessary at this stage, or, and this doesn't happen very often, but you might love what you see in that very first proof and be happy to sign it all off. And then it's absolutely final. When that's signed off, then the full print run can go ahead and you get all of your books. So you take delivery of those books and you store them, you promote them, hopefully you sell them, then you ship them to the customers and account for them as well. So regardless of what publishing model you choose to go with, these are the steps that it has to go through. Now what we're going to do is have a little look at the three publishing models, traditional, hybrid, and author-led, and explain how those models work.
So we'll start with traditional publishing, and this is what you probably think of when you hear that someone got a book deal. So this is where a publisher pays an author for the right to publish their work. The publisher assumes all the costs and risks associated with that, and they bring in professional expertise in book design, marketing, publishing trends, and so on to help make that book the best it can be. And the process here is that usually, there can be variations on this, but usually the writer would pitch either their concept or their completed manuscript to the publisher. They then consider it with their in-house team. If they love it, they make you an offer. There'll be some negotiations and you then accept the contract. The writer is usually paid in advance. Now, this is a chunk of earnings paid in advance. And when you hear someone got a large advance, it sounds quite exciting, but it is actually in advance of what you'll be paid from the sales of the book. So if you don't earn out your advance, if you don't sell as many copies as predicted, you do have to pay that back. So I have read of some successful authors who don't want advances anymore. They just want to, or they only want a small advance because they want to get the royalties later based on the actual sales of the book. So then you start working with your editor to complete the manuscript, your proofreader, and so on, and go through all the steps that we just described in the previous slide. And yeah, once the book is out in shops, you would then be paid royalties based on sales once your advance is covered. So the advantages of this, these are probably pretty obvious. You get the expertise of a professional team who are very knowledgeable about books, about what sells, about how to design a book and market a book so that it sells. You get all the proofreading and editing expertise, the knowledge of trends and so on. You have an established sales and distribution network. Now, this is important because bookstores have limited space and they have limited time to vet books. So when it comes from a publisher, it's essentially pre-vetted. They know, they trust the publisher for the quality of the ideas and concepts and the books that they will deliver. So it's easier for them to say yes to putting those books on the shelf. There's no upfront costs to you, and there is a perceived prestige of being offered a book deal. If industry experts are willing to bet on your book, that carries weight for the book itself, for the bookshops, for people buying the book, and for you as the author. Now, there are also some cons to this. Like anything, there are a limited number of books published each year, as we've already seen, and so you're sort of waiting to have your idea selected by a publisher. That can be a slow process. Pitching to a publisher can take many months, and you're waiting to hear in that time. They put it into their schedule, which could be some time ahead. And once you've delivered the book, it can be anywhere from 6 months to a year before it ends up on the shelves. And you also give up a certain amount of creative control. And so while the author usually has input, and again, this varies from book to book, the publisher does have the final say over things like the title, the cover, the price, when it's going to come out, the way it will be promoted, and so on. And then finally, all the professionals involved in that process need to be paid for their work. So while every contract is individual, the author will take usually a small share of the earnings, typically somewhere around 10 to 15% as their royalties. And if you have an agent, the agent would usually be paid out of that as well. Now, royalties can vary. So this is just a guide. And then in some cases, there might be different levels of royalties for, say, the ebook versus the printed book, or a hardcover if they're doing a hardcover, and so on. So there's a whole lot of complexity in there. But that's just to give you an indication of how that works. So I'm just going to check everybody's in. Hopefully someone just joined. I think everybody's in the room. Right. So how do you actually make that happen? How do you get this book deal? Well, the first step is to come up with that marketable concept for your book. And a lot of the work that I do with my clients as book coach is around this, about what is your idea and how do we shape that into an idea that will sell, or will appeal to your audience of readers. So once you've got your concept and you've been working on your book, you can prepare a proposal. This is a serious piece of work. It includes things like an overview of the book in total, a chapter by chapter summary of the book so that you can read through anywhere between sort of 5 and 10 pages and get a real idea of the content of the book. It includes your marketing plan, your professional biography, an analysis of the likely audience for it. It includes sample chapters. Now, that said, agents and publishers have their own requirements, but generally the list of things that they want fits somewhere within a similar list of concepts. But you need it to be great. This is your shot to get noticed. It's your shot to sell the concept of the book to the publisher. So you need to do a really good job on this, and it can be a substantial piece of work that can take some time. Agents are busy people, publishers are busy people. They usually don't have a lot of time. They're going to be reading quickly, and you need to capture their attention, get them turning the book and wanting to see the full manuscript. That's the goal. So you're building the business case through that proposal. Now, a question that often comes up, do I need an agent? In the US and the UK, and I believe mostly in Australia too, you do need an agent to take you on. They're essentially like the gatekeepers. You first pitch to an agent, and if they agree to represent you, then they go and pitch your book to publishers on your behalf. They will negotiate a contract if one comes through, and they can help you stand out, because you've probably heard the term slush pile, where lots of pitches and proposals end up and don't really get looked at. That's just the reality of lots and lots of people sending in their books. So if you can get your book picked up by an agent, that's the first slush pile, then they, again, are like the pre-vetting. They build relationships with publishers. Publishers are going to have a sense that that agent, I pay attention when they send me a concept, for example. It's that first layer of vetting as to the concept of the book. So it can be very valuable. Agents do take a percentage of your royalties. So that's something to bear in mind as well. Sometimes that means they can negotiate up the contract. So, that may even out. In New Zealand, it's obviously a much smaller industry. And it's up to you. You can choose to hire an agent, or you can choose, to be represented by an agent. Again, you'd have to get them to take you on. Or you can pitch direct to publishers. In most cases, you can go direct to the website of the publisher. They will usually have somewhere there about how they prefer to receive submissions. Pay attention to that. Be really specific in what you do, so that if you've done the book proposal, you've done the work of the proposal, adapt it to the format requested by the publisher or the agent. It's an easy way to get rejected, to just not follow instructions. Some will say we only take pitches on Fridays and you have to fill out this form. Others might only open to submissions for 2 days a quarter, or 2 days every 6 months, and you need to submit in that window. So you really need to do your research first on finding out who's the right fit for you, but then what they want to see from your pitch and proposal. So let's say you've gone through that process, and happily your proposal and your pitch is now sitting in front of the editor at the publishing house. Sarah's going to tell us what happens next.
All right, so once you've got that manuscript in front of an editor, either via an agent or because they have picked it up out of the slush pile, or it's made it to their hands somehow and they're excited about it, if that's at a traditional publishing house, then it will then be taken to an acquisition meeting. So this is a meeting that is attended by everybody in the company who has a part to play in getting your book sold, and decisions around the viability of your book are made here in this meeting. So it's attended by lots of people. It's attended by the editorial team. This likely includes the editor who originally read your manuscript and brought it to the table. There might be other editors present as well. There is also the production team there. Those are the people who are responsible for designing and printing and publishing the book and making it into an ebook as well. Also present is the sales and marketing team, whose job it is to promote and sell the book into bookstores and coordinate things like a book launch or other marketing campaigns. They also, in part, help to decide when is the best time for your book to be published. So maybe it makes sense for your book to come out on Mother's Day, or maybe it's more of a Christmas book. They'll know if there are other books similar to yours already in the schedule. So those sorts of timing questions are discussed as well. And finally, the finance team is there. And of course, it's their job to decide if this particular book is going to make the company enough money. So if the consensus after that whole discussion is that they do want to publish your book, then it's approved by the team. You would then be sent a contract, or it would go via your agent. And we can say now, congratulations, you've got yourself a book deal.
Now, while that whole acquisitions process is going on, you wait, and sometimes you wait, and then you wait again. Most publishers will give you, or agents will give you, a time frame in which you can expect to hear from them, and that's usually on their website where they talk about how they prefer to hear from authors. And that might be anything from 2 weeks to 4 months. And in a lot of cases, they'll say if you haven't heard from us within that time frame, then it's a no. So it's implied rejection, which can be very painful when that happens. You sort of wait around for a while and then eventually decide they're not interested. But it's also very normal. In most cases, your book may have to be pitched a few times before you get to the right publisher. It's a very individual journey. You certainly can't say that every book gets picked up the first time, right? So if it's gone to the acquisitions meeting and it's a no, either directly told or by implied rejection, you've then got some choices. You can either revise, go back and have another look. Is there anything I need to tweak? If I'm pitching to a different agent or publisher, do they want it slightly differently? And then go back, pitch again, wait for your decision. Or you might decide, I'm going to go down one of these other paths that we will look at now. Okay, so hybrid publishing. This is a model where the author and the publishing company share the costs of producing the book. You don't get an advance, you invest up front, but you take a greater share of sales, and the publisher brings some expertise to the table. So this can vary a lot. There's probably a lot of different arrangements that would fall under this heading. So I'm not going to get too specific about that, but there will usually be a partnership agreement that sets out the arrangements between you. You'll invest up front for the preparation and production of the book, and then you'll work with them to finalize the manuscript and get it distributed and potentially marketed as well. So pros, you get a higher share of the profits, you get to have creative control over the book, and you will get the benefit of the professional team at the publishing house. So it can really suit an author who's quite entrepreneurial or wants more control, or is operating on a really tight time frame. Someone needs to get the book out quickly for a particular purpose or event. The cons is that the costs can be high and the support varies. So this is an evolving slice of the industry, and there is a whole range of players in here, and some are really reputable and bring a lot of experience in the book market and expertise and can offer really valuable services, and others that promise a lot but don't deliver so much. So you really need to do your research, talk to other authors, get recommendations. Some of the things to look out for are about the size of the upfront payments, what services are actually provided, and how much help they'll offer with distribution and marketing. And also some have minimum purchase requirements. So you'll be required to buy, say 500 copies of your book or a certain number, and that can be a significant cost. So it's worth having checking that out very thoroughly at the beginning. And it also can be a slow process too. So from hybrid publishing, we move to self-publishing. So this is what you might call the DIY approach. You write the book, you decide on the format, and then you either do all the work yourself or you hire experts, hire a team to come in and do that for you, and you design and execute your own sales, marketing, and distribution plan. So the sorry, I have lost one slide. The pros, you take all the earnings, you have the creative control, and you can produce a book really fast. So I'm going to hesitate to say the amount of time, but certainly, in a couple of months, you can get your book out there. That will vary again depending on availability and how much needs to be done and so on. So, but if you want to get the book done very quickly, this can be a great way to go. The cons are that all the steps are on you. You won't have any professional guidance except that which you hire. So all the costs are on you as well. There is a huge amount to learn. I had a client recently who did everything herself. And I mean, it was, I don't want to put a number on the hours, but a lot of hours learning a lot of different things. And that can be great if you think you're going to produce a lot of books or you really want to understand every aspect of the process, but you need to have a lot of time to invest in it. So in most cases, you're going to hire experts for some or all of the process, and all the costs of that are on you. And then there's the prestige thing. Self-publishing is becoming more widely accepted, and I've had clients who are self-published who've managed to get their books into some pretty prestigious bookstores, but that requires a lot of surely that is what I want to say. You've got to go and see the bookstores yourself and convince them that it's a quality product, right? Because you're not coming through vetted by a major publisher. So it's possible, but it's going to be a little bit harder. Sarah, you had a thought on this one too?
I was going to add to that. Yeah, one of the pros of self-publishing, of course, is that there are no gatekeepers. Anyone can do it. And one of the cons is that anyone can do it. And unfortunately, there are some substandard self-published books out there. And, for whatever reason, either because the author perhaps has tried to cut corners to keep costs down, or they've imagined that they can do what takes a whole team of trained professionals to do to get a quality book out there to the market. But in the past, there were many poor quality books, and it has given self-publishing a bit of a bad rap. But now, of course, there's no excuse for poor quality. You're going to need to produce an excellent quality book if you want to see it in the bookshop and make sales. And that means high quality writing, design, and production. So that leads me to the next model that we're going to talk about, which is called author-led publishing. So this is a happy medium between the creative and the financial advantages of self-publishing, but with the support network of experienced publishing industry professionals in place to back you up and make sure that the choices that you are making around your book are well informed and are going to hopefully result in a better product. So Waiako Books is a whānau-owned publishing house that is part of Waiako Limited, a provider of educational resources. Since 2017, Waiako has been bringing Te Reo Māori and New Zealand history lessons to over 20,000 primary school children across the country. And we recently branched out into book publishing, and last year we published 3 titles. So we're currently looking for some new authors to work with across all genres. And we celebrated a win last month, which I really want to share with you. One of our books, Understanding Te Tiriti, reached number 3 on the bestseller chart. Our author was invited to the Auckland Writers Festival. It has sold in the thousands, and we haven't even done the ebook yet. So we're really stoked about that. And that was a self-published or author-led published book. And she came to me with the idea in December last year, and it was on the shelves by February. So that was an example of one book that we just really got out quite quickly. And that's been a real success. So it's been great fun to work on that. So in my capacity as a designer and a consultant here, I'm there to guide authors through the process of self-publishing and to help them identify any aspects of the process that they might be able or want to do themselves. So authors might want to take on some of these steps themselves to save money, or perhaps they want to maintain a certain level of creative control. I also help them identify the areas where they might need to engage a professional, such as for the technical stuff like typesetting or dealing with complex content, things like diagrams and illustrations, cover design, and preparing files correctly for print and or ebook publication. So author-led publishing, the best way to describe it is that it is your story told your way. Authors have the flexibility to decide how to do this book, how to make it actually happen, but they can access the professional support as they need it at any stage. So at Waiako, we believe that authors should have the best of both worlds in terms of the flexibility to do DIY self-publishing, but with access to the kinds of advice and support and skills that they need to make a really high quality book that they can be proud of and that sells and that stands out in a very crowded market. That's why we call it author-led publishing, because you get to make all of those creative decisions. Many hybrid and DIY services have a minimum spend, as Christine mentioned before, or they might say you have to purchase a minimum number of books after the books are all made. Or they offer packages of services. Now, these packages might not contain the particular service that you need because every book is different. For example, you might have a friend who is fantastic at proofreading. So you don't want to be paying for a service like that if you don't actually need it. The services that we provide in this author-led model are all customizable. So it's like you're choosing dishes off a menu. You just order as many or as few as you would like. Because what I found over the years working with a lot of authors is that some people are really hands-on. They can and they want to take on a lot of the process themselves. So they want to create their own social media marketing campaign, for example, or they really want to do their own book launch. But other authors just want to write their book and then hand me the Word document and say, off you go and make it, come back to me when it's a finished book. And then they prefer to spend their time doing the thing that they love, which is the actual writing part of it. So what you get from us, which is different to what you might get from hybrid or DIY approaches, is personalized bespoke product. We don't use any templates or what are called pre-designs, like a lot of the DIY options. Your cover and your internal design is completely unique and original to your book. There's not going to be any other book that looks exactly like yours. You can make as many changes as necessary. Most hybrids and template DIY options only let you make, say, 3 edits before an hourly rate kicks in. So I work really closely with every single one of my authors in a really collaborative way to craft a cover design and internal designs that they absolutely love and that they know these designs are informed by experience and industry knowledge. So a few more details about author-led publishing that are really important is that you retain all the rights to your work and all of the profits. Waiako doesn't pay royalties or take a cut of what you earn. You pay for the service up front that you need, and then there are no more additional costs. The menu of available services are all transparently priced. So they're presented as that menu of individual items rather than packages that might include the things that you don't actually want or need. So you can prepare a budget and you can stick to that budget in whatever way works for you. You can also come back to us at any time for help with the parts of the process that come after you've got the book, which is the marketing side. So we can work with marketing campaigns, publicists, help you with paid ads, make an author website, make social media content. And if you want us to, then we can handle all your packaging and distribution as well. If your book happens to vibe with our kaupapa, then we might also offer you the opportunity to publish under the Waiako imprint. So by doing that, you would get a bit more administrative support and access to some other free publication services. And you also get your book promoted through our channels. Additionally, something else that you may not have thought about, that if your book happens to support some of the New Zealand school curriculum, then we can get you, hopefully get that book into schools as well, and we can help there with our network of schools that we have a relationship with. We recently published a memoir called A Different Kind of Kiwi, and it was written about a family's escape from Laos in the 1970s after the coup, and they made it to New Zealand as refugees, and it's a family memoir. Now, this actually happens to fit really well into the New Zealand history curriculum, telling our stories. So we're currently promoting that one to schools as well. Other topics that schools are really resonating with at the moment are mental health and well-being for children and also financial literacy. So something else to potentially think about there. So you might be asking yourself, is self-publishing right for me? If you're looking for the easy road, then I would say no. If you have absolutely zero interest in being a promoter, a producer, a printer, a packer, thinking about your book as a product and being entrepreneurial about it, then no, I would say try going after a publishing deal or get picked up by an agent. If, however, you want to outsource the tasks that don't fit with your skill set or your schedule, then you might look at author-led publishing, which gives you the best of both worlds, gives you that experience and those professionals guiding you through the process, but with your creative input, your vision, your profits, particularly at the heart of the project, so you can end up with a book that you can really be proud of.
Okay.
And that brings us, to the end of our presentation. So if anyone has any questions, you're very welcome to unmute yourself and ask us now if you'd like, or you can pop your questions into the chat. You can see our websites are up there. You're welcome to go and get in touch with us through those websites. And if you haven't already, please do sign up to the mailing list.
Okay. Checking the chat. Nobody's got a question there. Anyone?
My kid's blonde. Thank you.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground today, and I actually thought it would take us longer to get through it. I think we spoke quite quickly. So there is quite a lot to digest there. But if there's anything else that we haven't covered or that you've always wondered about.
I've got a quick question. I've been looking at Lulu, which is a printing option. So instead of getting a whole lot of books printed and sent to me, they print on demand. And you can connect through Amazon, the order can come through Amazon and they send internationally. Is that something you are familiar with? Is that a good option?
I've had a couple of authors do that, but they are not based in New Zealand. The authors that have done that I've worked with have been writing illustrated children's books. And they want to get that into the North American market. I think with Amazon KDP, which is also the print on demand thing, where so print on demand is where you upload your book. No one prints it until somebody buys it. So if I go on and I buy a copy of the book, Amazon prints it and then they ship it to me, and then I pay just for that one copy. So there's no inventory to worry about, which is a good thing. But shipping to places like New Zealand and Australia can just take a really long time. The costs can be a little bit prohibitive. But if you're looking at the American market, then that's definitely a good option.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
I had a client produce this book, Kat. I don't think it was Lulu, but it was a similar kind of operation. So she's based in Philadelphia, and she sent me this copy of the book, and I think it was printed in Australia and posted to me. Now, obviously, she doesn't make as much per copy on doing it that way, but it just it meant she didn't have to have inventory, and she didn't have, for her to post me this book and from Philadelphia to New Zealand would probably have cost similar to actually getting the whole cover price there. So I don't know. What she didn't want was, she wanted it to be equitable wherever you were ordering the book from, so you weren't paying huge postage on top of the book. And it is good. I think it's pretty good quality. She ordered, I think, a couple of different versions of it to check like the paper quality and how the print was turning out and so on. But I have done an interview with her where I've captured all of that, so I'll let you know.
Oh, cool. Thank you. And the other question I've got is, if North America is the main market that I want to get into, should I be using American English in my book?
What's your, I'd probably, yes, I think, that would be my gut reaction to that question. What sort of genre of book is it? What's your book about?
It's nonfiction, and it's for consultants specifically, so really niche for B2B consultants on how to niche.
I think that kind of language would probably really resonate, and it can be a little bit jarring, if you're trawling through books that are available online, you don't know the author, you don't know the publisher, there's nothing that jumps out at you as being, oh yeah, that sounds like an obvious choice. If you start reading a blurb or a synopsis and something jars with the way that language is, even if there's something technically wrong with it, then that might be enough to put people off. So maybe working with an editor who is North American, or has worked with books in that market might be a good idea.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
There is a question there about baseline price lists. I'm not sure if this is directed at me or you, Sarah. Is there a price list on your website, or is it done on a case-by-case basis?
It is done on a case-by-case basis, but we do have a lovely complicated spreadsheet that spits out a price at us based on the things that you want, the services that you want. So it's definitely comes after a face-to-face conversation. But feel free to get in touch if you want to talk about costs in any more detail and how that might relate to your particular book. Did you want to add anything to that, Christine, about your process?
Well, I was just going to say, in terms of the cost of printing the book, one thing I think authors, and I need to rein myself in here too, but one thing I think authors often don't take into account is the more you have diagrams, headings, I'm just looking for some examples in here, you know, like, you know, a graph or something like that, or even these little breakout quotes, or Kristen's got little squiggles there between sections. All of that stuff is design work, right, Sarah? So you can correct me here if I'm wrong, but the more of that there is, the more complicated it is to lay out the book and get that looking just so. So be thoughtful about, in terms of costs, be thoughtful about how much pretty work goes into the book, I guess. Is that fair, Sarah?
Yeah, you don't want to pretty it up for the sake of prettying it up. I don't think that actually adds anything to a book. If it's fiction, that's kind of a slightly different way of you know, communicating a bit more of the story. But with nonfiction, if you've got information that you want people to understand easily, then everything that goes into the book has to work really hard. You know, all the design decisions that someone like I would make when I'm typesetting it are all in support of the content.
Yeah.
So yeah, we start with the content, we start with the message, and then think, right, how do we arrange all of this so that the reader has the best experience possible? And if that means paring it back and not having lots of things on the page, then we do that. If a particular concept is going to be supported by a diagram, then yes, it would make sense to have that diagram there.
Yeah. Yeah. And also thinking about the reader, right? So in this case, this book is written for people who are struggling with chronic illness, so their attention span might be quite short in terms of how long they can focus on a book. So it's purposely done in little pieces that can be digested at different times. Renata's just added there, as a North American, my advice is to you definitely use North American English. It's more than just Z instead of S. And I think, yeah, you got to write for your market, right? So if that's where you're primarily aiming it, then you should be thinking about your audience and your intended reader. Hey, anyone else? You are entitled to a half-an-hour session with either or both of us if you want to as well. I'll be sending out the link to book those in the email that comes out with this. There's no immediate, you don't have to do that next week. You can just book that when the time is right, but we're really happy to talk about your projects offline or online, but not on this call, where you can give you more detail on your particular projects. Okay. Anyone else? There might be someone disappearing. Okay. There's no other questions. I think we've probably covered everything.
Great. Looking forward to connecting with you as well. Sarah, thank you for your comment. Great. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for coming along live. It's nice to have people here on the call. Forward to seeing what your books are all about.